Good evening, Bahamas. You're tuned into NB12, broadcasting from Cable 12 Studios on Robinson Road. Here's what's making news tonight. The Minister of National Security outraged over the lengthy clearance process for badly needed new police vehicles. More than 30 new jobs thanks to Urban Renewal 2.0, a heart-wrenching story of abuse with a happy ending. Plus, a Golden Girl advocates for animal rights. Those stories and much more on the way. I'm Nakia DeVoe, and NB12 starts right now. Thanks again for joining us here at NB12. 26 new police vehicles will soon hit the streets after being parked up at the Nassau container port for more than a week. The National Security Minister says those vehicles should have been cleared days ago, adding that each day they were on Arawak Key is a day they were not patrolling our streets. Vonning Toot reports.
After being parked here on Arawak Key for more than a week, 26 new police vehicles have finally been picked up. National Security Minister Dr. Bernard Nodded says he's a little upset that it took so long, as those vehicles are desperately needed by the Royal Bahamas Police Force.
Those cars are essential to the work we're doing in the communities, the saturation patrols and so forth. So, you know, we really don't want them on the dock. When I expect it today. Those cars are supposed to be brought in exempt of customs fees. And so it's just a question of clearing them, not paying customs. I think the customs have already issued the necessary exemption for them to be cleared from the dock.
Officials began clearing the vehicles from a parking lot near the Nassau container port this week. At around 1 this afternoon, the 6 remaining vehicles, white Ford Police Interceptors, were removed from another lot near the entrance of Arawak Key. Nottage says Urban Renewal now has all of the vehicles it needs. Therefore, the new fleet will go to the Uniformed Branch and Selective Enforcement Task Unit. Instead of being parked up, he says those vehicles should have been in our communities.
That I notice a significant amount of little skirmishes in a certain part of the main and grandstand area, discovery of weapons, questions of armed robbery. Some weeks ago there was a young man who resided in the Finlayson Street area who was killed outside of Bain Town. Where we have the hot spots and we know where they are, the idea is to ensure that the police in those areas are there and that they are mobile.
Saturation patrols began in June in an effort to address the escalating level of violent crime in New Providence. The Bainstown and Grantstown MP says while he is satisfied that police are doing all they can, he's hoping for better results.
As long as we continue to come across weapons, as long as we continue to have these armed robberies, as long as we continue to have the episodes where the police have to respond to crime by using their firearms, I cannot be satisfied. So no, I'm not satisfied. I think I'm satisfied with the effort that's been put in, but I'm not satisfied with the results. And this is not a criticism, this is a reality.
The National Security Minister says he's expecting another shipment of vehicles, bringing the total number of new vehicles to 70. Reporting for NB12, I'm Vonning Toot.
Former Minister of National Security Tommy Turnquest said yesterday that he has no problem with the way police will report crime statistics in the future, a position he shares with the current Minister of National Security. Nottage told us that as long as all the crime statistics are released, he has no problem with Police Commissioner Ellison Greenslade's decision to change the way they are presented. Greenslade said Monday that attempted murder, attempted robbery, and stealing from vehicles will no longer be included when major crime statistics are released, but will be listed on a separate sheet moving forward. He said the rationale behind the move is that lumping the statistics together has caused Bahamians too much distress. Turnquest said as long as all the crime data is released and there is a base year figure to compare against previous years, then there should be no problem. Well, after spending months and in some instances years on the unemployment line, 33 residents of Bainstown and Grantstown now have full-time jobs. They were among 600 people who applied for jobs during a recent urban renewal job creation fair in that constituency. After canvassing that community, officer in charge of the Bainstown Urban Renewal Office, Inspector Anthony Roll, says they realize that unemployment is one of the biggest concerns among residents. He says even before the job fair was held earlier this month, the participating companies agreed to hire at least one person. One business ended up hiring as many as 10.
Woodside Landscaping were able to secure employment for 10 persons, 10 residents of the Bain and Grantstown area. Bahamas Food Services were able to employ 3. Wemco Security were able to employ 8. Tri-Point Communication were able to employ 4. Frank Hanna, cleaning company, were able to employ 2. Bay Street Garage were able to employ 1. And Fowler's Landscaping were able to employ 5.
Rowe says that number could increase as some companies are still interviewing prospective employees. 25-year-old father of one, Brian Young, began working at Wemco Security 3 weeks ago. Meantime, Janet Fraser was hired by Tri-Point Communications following a 4-year job search.
And how long were you trying to find a job before you were hired?
It's been about a year roughly. Yeah.
And what are some of the things you'll be able to do now that you are employed?
Well, actually, I'll be able to do the things I'm supposed to, to take care of family, whatnot. I can stand on my own,
I'm excited and ready to work.
And just tell us about what you'll be doing at Tri-Point.
Working in sales and marketing.
Now, urban renewal officials plan to hold similar job fairs in other communities. A woman who suffered a horrible childhood, being sexually and mentally abused almost every day by her uncles, has brought her story of survival to the Bahamas in hopes of inspiring others who may have had experiences like those she and her sister went through. But as Paige McCartney tells us, this is also a story of survival.
In her book, Rising Above the Scars, Alabama-born Janetta McSwain details the horror of her childhood. Abandoned by her alcoholic mother, she and her older sister grew up living with her grandmother and 3 uncles in a small Birmingham, Alabama home. She said it was when her grandmother went to church or went fishing that her uncles would force her and her sister and her male cousin to perform horrific sexual acts on them. In a documentary entitled The Road Beyond Abuse, narrated by actress Jane Fonda, McSwain recounts the horrifying years of her childhood. Where other 8-year-old girls were carefree, she had contracted syphilis from one of her uncles.
The abuse started with my uncles sitting us in chairs, maybe 3 chairs in the living room. They would lock all the doors.
Whoop us, beat us, make us get them blowjobs, whoop us with stitching cords. We used to try to run outside, they still beat us. And they,
I can remember my panties as a little girl being ripped off and your clothes ripped off. It was just so brutal. And I couldn't understand why would somebody in your blood, your relatives, do that to you. And having a boy cousin, watching a boy, being molested and penetrated, it was just horrific. It was horrific to go through. And this happened for years.
Unwanted by her mother, McSwain also talked about the psychological abuse she and her sister experienced. For example, McSwain would wet her bed because of the abuse and then be punished.
One of my punishments was to sit outside, had to be about December, January, to sit outside butt naked, no clothes, right out the bed, until I learned my lesson.
While sitting on these steps in raw Birmingham winters, Janetta came down with pneumonia and was hospitalized. Threatened by her uncles, she never told about the abuse.
I was so afraid, so I didn't tell anyone because the fear that was put in me. Another thing was my mother was gone so much, and coming from a parent who didn't want me, who also emotionally abused me, Why should I tell? Who cared? You know, who cared?
Why was they beating us? Why? Why was nobody there but to protect us? Why was they beating our heads into the doors? Why was they grabbing our feet from behind her? Why? Why did nobody believe us? Why? What was my mama? What was my mama?
McSwain and her sister, having their childhood robbed from them, spiraled into a life on the streets. She admitted to alcoholism and prostitution. She said her sister became addicted to drugs. At the age of 22, McSwain found herself with her own unwanted pregnancy. But after years of abuse and suffering, she decided for herself that she wanted to break the cycle. At the age of 30, McSwain packed up her 2 young sons and moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and enrolled in college. She told her story of triumph to the attendees of the Crisis Center Regional Peace Conference at the Sheraton Cable Beach Resort on Thursday.
At 30 years old, I realized at that time in my life that every man in my family had touched me, had raped me, had fondled me, had hit me, had abused me, had kicked me, had stomped me, had did me wrong. And I said, oh my God, I gotta do something for my baby boys, because if I don't do nothing, then they're gonna be the next man in this family. They're gonna rape their daughters and their women. They're gonna be locked up in jail. And I refuse, you hear me? I refuse to see my babies in a black body bag. I refuse to go pick my babies up out the corner. I refuse to see them on the corner selling dope. I refuse to see them beat somebody's ass, not my boys.
McSwain said although she went through all of the abuse, she knew she had to do something. She's encouraging others who have had her experiences to do the same.
You gotta be real with yourself, baby. You can't say, well, see, that happened to me because. You gotta suck it up, baby. And you gotta feel it. And when I got through, I called my landlord. I said, baby, I'm leaving Atlanta. She said, where you going? I said, I'm leaving Birmingham. I'm going to have no money, no man, no job. You hear me? It didn't matter. But what I had was a will, baby. The urgency to live. The urgency to, like I said, it's a new day.
McSwain recently graduated with a master's in social work from Clark Atlanta University. She's now working toward her PhD. She also recently watched her son go to college. He's the first male in her family to do so.
Johnetta McSwain's triumphant story is horrifying and uplifting at the same time. You can watch the complete documentary by logging onto YouTube and typing in "The Road Beyond Abuse" in the search field. You can also visit risingaboveTheScars.com for more information on McSwain's book and where you can purchase it. Also, contact the Bahamas Crisis Center for information on how you or somebody you know can overcome abuse. Reporting for MB12, I'm Paige McCartney.